The old carnival came to life on the outskirts of Velltown every summer. Cotton candy, and performers eager to start the Independence Day celebration. I volunteered to work a night shift there as part of my teens, helping out in exchange for free entry. It was 11 p.m. on the 3rd of July, and the carnival was nearly empty. I sat in a rusty ticket booth, doing homework by the tiny lamplight, when I heard a tinkling laugh echo from the main tent, the so-called funhouse. We had heard rumors about it, but dismissed them. Still, curiosity got the better of me, so I walked over. Inside, the mirrors were cracked in places, making twisted reflections of the empty chairs. In the center hung a clown mask on a mannequin. It's painted. I shivered and turned to leave, bumping into something behind me. I stumbled back. A teenage girl in a vintage carnival costume stood in the shadows, face partially hidden by a mask, eyes gleaming. She had that clownish grin painted on her lips, but there was something hollow in her voice. "You scared me," I managed to say. She giggled and stepped closer. "Silly volunteer boy," she said softly. "It's past midnight. You shouldn't be here after hours." She tilted her head, looking through me. An icy shiver danced up my spine. I offered a nervous smile. "Just checking inventory," I said. "I'll head back out." I turned, starting to tug the curtain, but she gently rested a hand on my shoulder. Her touch was freezing. "Wait," she whispered. "Come with me." She swung the mask on her face slowly. Underneath, I recognized her. She was the missing girl from the town news. Marigold vanished on July 4th last year. "Marigold?" I gasped, feeling lightheaded. The last news I heard was that she never turned up after wandering into the carnival. The mask on the mannequin suddenly fell. I saw a title stamped on its tag: Midnight Clown. There was no trick show scheduled for midnight, but our carnival had always thrilled with fear. She took my arm, pointing deeper into the funhouse maze. Panic clawed at me. "I have to go." Marigold's expression faded. "No," she said softly. Her face was pale and wet, like she'd been crying in the dark for years. Her eyes looked empty. She muttered, "They left me." I waited by the clown painting, but they never came. A rush of sadness made my throat choke. In the hallway of mirrors, I saw her reflection flicker into something monstrous broken glass. 4 teeth. "Please," I pleaded. "I'll help you find them. I promise." Her laugh twisted into sobbing wails. Suddenly, the lights shut off with a snap. The only sounds were the thud of my rapid heartbeat and a sudden deep breathing behind me. I felt a hand brush past my ear. I screamed, yanking my flashlight from my belt. Beam after beam, I searched the inky darkness. Mirrors showed only my own scared face, but across one cracked pane, I saw her silhouette walk off towards a corner. "Marigold," I shouted. She didn't respond. I chased the shadow. The carnival lights began to turn off as dawn approached, and I found myself out. The air was cold and silent. There, lying on a bench that should have been empty, was her clown mask. The real girl was gone. The firefighters and police arrived as I stumbled out. I told them what happened, my words tumbling out in panic. They found nothing, not even footprints. Years later, that carnival is still gone. Marigold's disappearance remains a mystery, but I remember stepping into the funhouse that night, the cold, whisper-soft voice guiding me deeper. Sometimes, in my nightmares, I'm back in that mirror maze, chasing the sound of her laughter, still wanting to help the lost clown girl find the morning that never came. Philadelphia was bustling with the 4th of July parade. Old brick buildings dripped with flags, and children ran around laughing. I came alone to the city for the first time, curious about its history. As night fell, I decided to wander near Independence Hall, where the Declaration of Independence was signed. The crowds had thinned as fireworks. Time was nearing. I walked past the Liberty Bell under a dark, star-speckled sky. As the city below prepared to celebrate, I felt inexplicably alone in the quiet street. Out of nowhere, a man in a faded 1770s army coat walked toward me. Stepping out of the shadows by the old churchyard, he looked real powdered wig curling onto his shoulders. His face was gaunt, eyes hollow. He didn't belong in this time. He stopped and stared at me. Unblinking, I blinked, certain I was mistaken. "Excuse me, sir," I said gently. He didn't answer. The air grew cold. He motioned with his head and whispered, "You shouldn't be here, boy." His voice cracked like an autumn leaf. A thin film of sweat beaded my forehead. "Why? What do you mean?" I asked shakily. The street was deserted except for us. The distant pop of fireworks echoed once from afar. The ghostly soldier gave me a sad tilt of his head. "You've stepped on hallowed ground. I'm just a tourist." Eyes tam. Out of curiosity, I realized a plaque under a sycamore tree beside him said, "This ground once soaked with blood at Brandywine." 1777. He took a single step backward, his uniform seeming to shift between pristine. Long ago, men fought here for freedom, and lives were spilled into the earth. His eyes closed briefly. The figure opened his eyes to fix me with a cold glare. "Freedom?" he echoed sadly. "You know what they hide from you." I shook my head. "We died for liberty, and we got betrayal instead." A sharp pain shot through my chest, as if his sorrow was piercing me too. He looked away, eyes distant. "I remember who sent us the smugglers, the seditionists." His head snapped back. "They still celebrate this day with wine and parades." His face twisted in anger. I took a nervous step backward. He charged at me like a charging horse, but threw me. I stumbled as anguished. Scream followed me. "They betrayed us. Patience, patience." I ran without looking back. Behind me, I heard the distant fireworks that signaled midnight. I sped away from Independence Hall, down an empty street, under flickering lantern light, desperate to leave the colonial tableau behind. 2 hours later, I was in a run-down motel bed, sheets tangled around my legs. My mind kept replaying the encounter. I still heard the whisper of drums and muskets in the dark. The soldier's ghostly figure was burned into my vision. On my flight home, I nearly jumped when someone on the plane shouted, "Happy 4th." My hands shook slightly as I clutched it. Because in Philadelphia that night, independence took on a darker meaning, and I could never look at fireworks without hearing the distant roll of a revolutionary drum. The July night was thick with ozone and the distant boom of fireworks. I lit another bottle rocket in the alley behind an abandoned lot. I was 22, a college kid, already tipsy with beer, daring myself to be fearless. The fireworks laws in San Francisco were strict, but sneaking one off on Treasure Island was a rush. My friends dared me to try the biggest one they had. It was a tube, about 8 inches long. "This one's nuts," Miguel said, snatching it from my hand. We laughed as he stuffed it in the ground and lit the fuse with his Zippo. But I saw his hand trembling. He had pinned the tube so close to the wall that it didn't seem safe. "Let's back up," I shouted. Half sneering, with a deafening snap, the tube exploded. It sent a shockwave of flame bursting outward. I was lucky. I was behind him. The back of Miguel's jacket turned white-hot, and he screamed like he was on fire. Shards of metal shrapnel rained down. I saw a chunk of the fuse embed in his arm. As he crumpled to the ground, I heard the wet, awful sound of fingers popping. One of his gloves fell away, and 3 tiny fingers rolled to my feet. I stared, sickened. as bright blood oozed from his open wounds. Miguel's scream was muffled by a broken megaphone thrown from the fireworks blasting. I yelled, dropping my beer and grabbing at his arm. It slipped through my fingers. His eyes were wild, filled with pure terror and confusion. "It's okay, I tried to say. But this was anything but okay. His throat made a strangled gurgle. The explosion had collapsed his windpipe. I pulled off my t-shirt and pressed it to his burning jacket, trying to smother the flames on his shoulder. He was screaming for his mum. "I'm sorry," he sobbed, as broken shards of fuse still sizzling in the alley lit up the dark. I had never been so certain that life could rip away in a split second. My chest felt hollow as I tried to staunch the blood on his arms. I told him to stay awake, to hold on, but then his eyes began to roll back. Somehow, I managed to flip him onto his side. A single breath. No second. My frantic face only saw red and black. I pressed again on his wounds, but his head lolled lifelessly. Sirens wailed far away. I was panting, soaked with sweat and Miguel's blood, and I felt a weight of guilt threaten to crush me. The alley smelled like sulfur and singed flesh. I thought, this should have been our victory night, and I had killed my friend. I sat back and closed my eyes, trying to imagine it was a nightmare. But when I opened them again, nothing had changed. A dark patch spread beneath Miguel's body. The Santa Marta fireworks show echoed above us, a cruel compliment to the disaster below. Later, in a cold police precinct, I barely answered questions. I couldn't escape the image of his mangled face. Flashback to the moment we lit that fuse. I remember my inner voice screaming for him to move away, and how I laughed until I realized it was too late. There was nothing supernaturally sinister about that night, just human recklessness. But in the quiet of my guilt, I felt something dark latch onto my mind. Months later, I still cannot light a candle without flinching. On every 4th of July, I smell smoke and blood. Sometimes I lie in bed at night, imagining Miguel's charred fingers reaching for me from beneath the pillows. There's no ghost, just the weight of knowing I could have walked away alive, and he didn't. The firework was meant to bring excitement, but it claimed a soul instead. And every burst of joy on that date now brings only dread for me. I never believed in ghosts until I checked into the DuPont mansion that rainy July 4th night. The mansion loomed over old Louisville like a somber Victorian smile under thick summer clouds. My friend James and I had agreed to spend the night there for our ghost hunting YouTube channel. We braved the weather mostly because they had advertised a 4th of July fireworks show on the Ohio River. Something about filming fireworks above a haunted mansion. The museum clerk warned us not to wander off. "Stick together," she said. "Don't tour the upper floors past midnight." James waved it off with a smile. "We do this all the time." The caretaker locked the main doors tight. We were alone, or so we thought. After minutes of room-by-room exploration and awkward campfire stories around an old fireplace, we decided to split up. He'd take the ballroom and library. I'd cover the upstairs corridors and bedrooms. We agreed to meet back in 30 minutes, or if either of us needed help. Almost immediately upstairs, I heard whispering in a rich, southern accent. The hallway lights flickered. My breath caught. Was that singing? It was quiet, a tune from another century. It sent tiny hairs along my neck into a frenzy. I tiptoed toward the sound. The tune became clearer. A woman humming a lullaby. Through a crack, under the door of the master bedroom, I saw her, a tall woman in a long Victorian gown, feeding an invisible child by the empty fireplace. Her hair was slicked back, dark, twisted into a bun. Her face was drawn and pale, her eyes fixed on nothing. She hummed softly and stroked the air as if calming a baby. I recognized the room. It had been Colonel DuPont's bedroom in life, but the woman was no colonel. It had to be Maggie Payne, rumored to be the madam who'd shot Uncle Vic DuPont. I reached out, suddenly wanting to touch her, apologize for invading this private moment. My hand froze in front of the door. The humming stopped, replaced by silence. The woman tilted her head toward the door, and then slowly, impossibly, turned her gaze on me. I jerked back, heart leaping to my throat. "Mister, you're trespassing," she said in a voice as smooth as whiskey on ice. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. She continued, "My baby, he's very hungry." Her lips parted into a strange half smile. I knew James was far behind me downstairs with cameras running. I couldn't scream. The floorboards creaked beneath her dress as she moved just a fraction, so close to the door. Her eyes never left mine. My stomach flipped. I stumbled back, whispering, "We should leave." Not sure if I meant the mansion. She shook her head, and the slightest chuckle escaped. "Oh no. You're here, and you will hold him." Her eyes blazed. In disbelief, I felt a small pair of hands grab my neck from behind. The air turned icy. I wheezed and fell to the floor. When I came to, I was back downstairs. James was standing over me, shaking me gently. "Mate, you screamed through the radio," he said in alarm. Through the haze, I saw he was missing a camera and held a flashlight. "What happened up there?" I panted. "Nothing happened. Man, don't joke." I coughed. The flashlight beam was flickering, casting the portrait of Uncle Vic DuPont on the wall. The expression on that painted face looked a bit too vindictive for my liking. I helped James turn on the main lights. The ballroom ceiling was collapsing in places from the weight of something unseen. I realized with horror that every creepy story about Uncle Vic and Maggie Payne was real. We rushed downstairs, packing gear in our jackets. As we left, the caretaker asked if we were okay. We only nodded quickly and drove off into the night. Later, from my side of the car, I glanced back at the mansion. Its silhouette was still there, dark windows like hollow eyes. And on the rooftop, lightning briefly revealed the figure of a woman in Victorian dress, standing silently. She smiled at us and vanished in a flash of thunder. We never returned to finish our ghost hunt, but sometimes I wonder if she's still up there. I watched the last embers of a boom rocket burst overhead. The purple twilight on Clearwater Beach was beautiful. As I shifted on the damp sand, I caught a whiff of what I can only describe as decayed roses. It was subtle, like the petals of a once fresh bouquet long abandoned on the shore. I frowned and glanced around, but the beach was empty, except for me. She was gazing at the sky, waiting for the main fireworks to start. I closed my eyes for a second, breathing in. The scent lingered. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her approach a young woman strolling along the tide line, quietly, in old-fashioned clothes. She wore torn jeans, shorts, and a faded t-shirt that looked decades old. A worn baseball cap hid most of her face, but when she turned and looked at me, she smiled at me and sat down on the sand nearby, just facing away. "She's strange," I whispered to my wife, nudging her with an elbow. My wife glanced over and shook her head. "Who?" she asked, confused. I was already watching the stranger. It felt as if the air itself had gone cold around her. Her skin was pale, and I swear I could see the slight outline of a bruise on her forearm. For a moment, I thought I saw a ghost of a bruise or something that shouldn't have been there. I stood up, careful not to draw attention. "Do you smell that?" I said, quietly to my wife, but she looked blankly at me. as if she smelled nothing. I turned back to look at the girl. She was sitting cross-legged, staring up at the darkening sky. She had no cell phone, no radio, no drink, unlike anyone else on the beach. She just sat there, silent. A firework shot up, filling the air with a thunderous boom and a shower of green and gold. I jumped and then caught sight of that girl again. As the light blossomed, she was illuminated for just a moment. I blinked, and she was gone. The sand where she sat was empty. My heart hammered in my chest. "Where did she go?" I murmured. My voice broke the spell. My wife gave me a puzzled look and pointed at my phone screen. "Are you watching the show on TikTok again?" she asked, trying to focus me. I realized she still couldn't see the stranger. I was alone in this. I scanned the crowd as the fireworks rumbled. "She was right here," I whispered to the night. I checked my phone for the time. 10:02 p.m. Still 10 minutes until the grand finale. A distant call from my children to pick them up from the park haunted my mind. The dread had taken root. After the fireworks ended with a final roar, we packed up. As we walked back to our car, I glanced over my shoulder. A lone flicker of movement at the shoreline made me spin around. The young woman was there again, standing in the shallow surf. Moonlight made her pale hair glisten. She was looking at me, tilting her head, smiling gently. The ocean lapped at her ankles like it welcomed her presence. "Are you okay?" I asked her, but the word froze. Her lips didn't move. The breeze whispered over the waves. Suddenly I realized she was alone. My wife held my arm. "Stop it," she said quietly, tugging me toward the parking lot. I took one last look at the woman. As I blinked, she vanished entirely. I didn't see her, I told my wife later in the car. I swear she looked right at me. I felt the seat shake as she exhaled sharply. "Honey, I think you need to calm down," she muttered. But even as I drove away, I saw her in my peripheral vision one more time. When I blinked again, she was gone. The car filled with silence as the ocean's breeze faded behind us. In my mind, that scent of rotten roses lingered. Wherever she had come from, I knew she wasn't far behind me.